Hey guys, welcome to another Genshin Impact video, and today we're going to be starting a new series on the channel. So I'm guessing many of you came from my main channel where I do mostly League content, although I made a few Genshin videos for a time before moving over to here. One of the leading flagship series I have on VARS is Why No One Plays, where I talk about champions in League of Legends who see very low pick rates by breaking down what makes them so unpopular, and I thought it would be an interesting series to make for Genshin as well. I know Genshin is a completely different game from League, but in some ways there are a lot of similarities with how players approach each title, and though the existing content isn't known for being too challenging, aside from maybe the later floors of Spiral Abyss, the Genshin community spares no amount of discussion trying to rank which units are the best in the game, as is the case for almost every gacha game. To kick off the first episode, I thought it would be cool to talk about everyone's favorite torchlighter, bench warmer, expedition fodder, Amber. Before we get started, I want to make a quick disclaimer that this video is not meant to be a personal attack on anyone's choices. Remember, Genshin is a single player game, and thus there is no right or wrong way to play said game. Like I mentioned before, this isn't a very challenging title. You don't need to have the best of the best to complete all content, even the quote-unquote hard stuff. There have been videos of people running all domains, bosses, and dungeons with only the free units Kaya, Lisa, Amber, and Aether/Lumine. So to all the Amber fans out there, just want to clear the air that this is purely discussion and I'm not bashing on your waifu, so let's begin. Amber is a 4-star unit and the very first playable character you receive apart from the Traveler. She's a 4-star bow user with a Pyro Vision and is currently one of the only 2 Pyro bow users, the other being Yoimiya. Unlike catalysts or melee weapons, bows have a unique mechanic called an aim shot. Upon holding left click or switching to aim shot mode, you enter a sort of third-person shooter point of view, upon which your bow begins to charge energy. By fully charging your attack, your arrow becomes imbued with whatever element the character is associated with. For example, on Fischl, her attack becomes Electro, for Ganyu it becomes Cryo, for Tartaglia it's Hydro, for Venti it's Anemo. For Amber, of course, her next attack deals pyro damage to the first enemy hit. As for her 2 abilities, her elemental skill is Explosive Puppet, which summons Amber's favorite stuffed animal, Baron Bunny, that's actually a bomb. While active, Baron Bunny draws aggro from nearby enemies, causing them to focus it instead of her. When destroyed or after a certain period of time, Baron Bunny explodes, dealing AoE pyro damage and generating energy particles. Her elemental burst is Fiery Rain, which marks a target location in front of her, rapidly striking that area for continuous pyro damage. As you might have guessed, by now Amber's primary function is DPS, and yeah, there's not much of it. Amber is notorious for being one of, if not the worst unit in Genshin Impact by a big portion of the community, and she will only continue to get worse as stronger and stronger units come out. But even in the early stages of the game, people were quick to dismiss her as just a convenient way to light torches for puzzles and whatnot, or just to use her as expedition fodder. I'm sure collectively there are a billion things wrong with her, but these are the 4 big ones that I came up with. The most noteworthy issue plaguing Amber is not of her own unique properties, but of the class she belongs to. Bows are just not very good at their current state in light of the inherent limitations and gameplay constraints placed on them. To get the high damage, you need to use charge shots, and there's no way to increase the speed of a full charge as of right now. Unlike melee weapons, which damage all targets in an area, bows are strictly single target focused, which isn't much of a problem against bosses, but considering 90% of Genshin Impact consists of battling clusters of enemies, you don't get much mileage out of using a bow character. As a result, most characters that use a bow just default to being support units, namely Venti, who is by far the best crowd controller with this massive Typhoon for an ultimate until Kazuha came out. Sada is also primarily used for support. The only bow users that have been able to achieve high levels of success as a main DPS are Tartaglia and Ganyu. Tartaglia is kind of an exception though, as he's for all intents and purposes a melee attacker, and only really uses his bow if his opponent is too far away to attack. Ganyu is a top tier DPS on account of her being straight up overpowered. Her double charge shot does an insane amount of damage while being AoE, which fixes the issue of bows not being able to target multiple opponents. Amber of course has neither aspect going for her, and she's a 4-star unit, which means she's naturally weaker in terms of scaling overall. General team building is where her next problem comes into play. Most of the time you only need 1 DPS and then the rest of your party is support. Those 3 would supply the carry with shields, buffs, elemental reactions. However, it wouldn't be uncommon for the main DPS themselves to give something to the party as well. Hu Tao's Ascension 1 passive gives their other party members 12% bonus crit rate for 8 seconds right as she swaps out. That way, while you're cycling through your support units, you can still maintain a bit of DPS. Amber doesn't provide anything of actual value to her team by default. The only supported buff she can give is a 15% attack and movement speed buff after casting her elemental burst, which isn't very much. Movement speed is hardly needed since dashes can help you sidestep most attacks, and attack buffs have to be very high scaling to be worthwhile as it's strictly worse than crit rate, crit damage, and elemental mastery in terms of scaling. Even for a 4-star unit, her buffs are pretty abysmal, and remember, this is only behind C6. On almost a literal level, Explosive Puppet is a weaker version of Ganyu's Trail of the Qilin, and it doesn't give you any energy charge until after explodes, nor is there any summon damage. This makes Baron Bunny way too slow of an ability to be effectively used in rotation. Moreover, Fiery Rain applies 18 instances of Pyro in like 1.5 seconds, which is actually a bad thing as it can screw up elemental reactions. With so much emphasis placed on chaining Vaporize, Melt, and things like that, the best characters are the ones who can nail you with one really strong hit, such as Diluc or Hu Tao. Amber's strongest ability can't be used for elemental reactions because it comes in the form of 18 smaller hits instead of one massive nuke. That's kinda the main reason why Amber is ranked so poorly. She's not only a bow user, but she has no real solid burst, which is the leading metric for judging a damage dealer's power. Consistent damage isn't very good either for bow users because their normal attacks can't be imbued with elements, and they don't attack that much faster than melee ones. It would be a different story if bow characters had super crazy attack speed so they'd be walking machine guns, but sadly that isn't the case. To add insult to injury, not only is Amber's full power extremely underwhelming, but getting there can be a big challenge too. Some characters in Genshin are greatly dependent on certain constellations to unlock their true potential, a trait that's more apparent in 4-star units in light of their lower rarity. Amber's no exception to this. Where this becomes a problem is that other 4-star units like Bennett and Xingqiu frequently appear in event banners, whereas she does not. Story units cannot and will not ever be featured in event banners, so in order to get max constellation on Amber, Lisa, or Kaya, you either have to be extremely patient and wait for them to appear in Paimon's Bargains 5 times, or you gotta bust out the old Benjamins and literally RNG your way through Wanderlust Invocation. Should you find yourself crazy enough to go through with it, the payoff doesn't justify the cost at all. And that's saying a lot considering Genshin is not a very worthwhile game to spend money on. I'm not saying that you have to go all the way to C6 to make her usable. Well, I mean the point is that she isn't usable even with them. But it kinda sucks how there's no fast and easy way to get constellations for story units despite desperately needing them just to be at a normal functional level. Okay, so let's assume despite all this you're still determined to make her work. You give her the best weapon possible, best artifacts, you somehow manage to max out her constellation, and you do all that. In theory, a fully optimized Amber might be able to beat out a suboptimal 5-star unit. Except the deck is stacked so hard against her because there's no shortage of Pyro units in the game. As of making this video, Pyro holds the largest roster out of any element in Genshin Impact, while also being the best offensive element in the game. Amber has to compete for a slot with the likes of Bennett, Hu Tao, Xiangling, Diluc, Klee, so many 5-star and 4-star units that can bring more to the table besides damage, while ironically beating her out in damage anyway. Even if we were to disregard the 5 stars, Bennett and Xiangling are 2 of the best 4-star units and both have their own completely unique and equally valuable purposes. Bennett is known for his ridiculously disgusting attack buff heal cleanse circle, and Xiangling is known for being a far more consistent and less janky version of Amber, at least if we compare their ultimates. The game allows you to preset 4 parties, but in each of those parties you can only have 4 members at a time. If your goal is to secure a decent range DPSer, literally anyone besides Amber does a better job. I understand Tartaglia, Yoimiya, Venti, and Ganyu are all 5-star units and probably not accessible for many players, but if you picked up Kruchosada or Fischl, they can more than suffice despite not being Pyro. On the other hand, if your objective is to pick up a Pyro unit, as I've said, there are a lot of Pyro units in the game. Amber's in a situation where everything that could go wrong for her kind of went wrong. She's on the worst weapon type in the game, she focuses on speed, which is far weaker than burst, she's a story unit so she will never be able to be easily pulled, and she's attached to an element with very stiff competition. I legitimately cannot think of any single thing that makes her worth picking up, and that's kind of a shame considering the beauty of Genshin's character design from a gameplay standpoint. While each unit only has access to a normal attack, charge attack, and a single elemental skill and burst, there are a lot of ways you can build your party to capitalize on each unit's synergy with one another, and I'm talking like to an extent where a tactical combination of 4-star units can vastly outstrip a random mix of 5 stars in efficiency and efficacy. What I'm basically trying to say is the gap between the best of the best and the average or below average units isn't really that wide, except Amber is like all the way down at the bottom, she's literally unusable. If we play devil's advocate for a moment though, I don't think Amber was ever meant to be good. She's the first unit you acquire and exists mostly to teach you how to use aim shots and glide, as evident by her passive talent which reduces gliding stamina consumption. Story units are not meant to be all that good because if they were as good as Hu Tao or Kazuha, then there would be no reason for players to pull for those other units. I know a few people might respond by saying, then why does MiHoYo give her so much exposure? She plays a significant role at the beginning of the game, and according to what people told me, she's like the protagonist or something in the manga. I wouldn't know, I never was aware that there even was a manga. Well, I mean, Pikachu is the mascot of Pokemon, and he's pretty bad. Even his evolved form Raichu isn't that strong of a Pokemon. A character having a lot of screen time doesn't necessarily have to translate to being effective in-game. But alright, let's acknowledge that Amber is just so incredibly bad even in the context of being a free party member. What can be done to possibly make her better? For starters, one change I think they could do is address her poor wave clear. Ganyu's Celestial Shower and Frostflake arrows give her some incredible mobbing, but for the sake of not making Amber a fire version of Ganyu, here's what I propose. If Amber lands a charge shot at Baron Bunny while it's on the field, it will explode immediately, dealing both the explosion damage and the charge shot damage to all targets caught in the blast. My reasoning for this is sort of like Gangplank from League of Legends. If you attack the barrel, it does that damage echoed all around it. That could be a way to add some more depth to her gameplay, because if you hypothetically set two Baron Bunnies right next to each other, then we're talking some pretty nasty damage. That would also most likely increase her viability in Spiral Abyss. The ladder floors and chambers usually have two spawn points in front and behind the player, and that's usually taken care of by using an Anemo unit like Venti or Kazuha, but Amber can throw a Baron Bunny at both sides and detonate them from the center. Again, this isn't supposed to magically make her top tier, but in theory, it would fix one of her major weaknesses being her non-existent clear speed. I think a lot of us just accepted the fact that Amber is and will always just be bad though. Anyways, please let me know what you thought of this video if you want to see more. I enjoyed making it. I might consider doing this for a few other characters, like Shinyan, Kokomi, maybe Kutsing and stuff, so let me know in the comments down below if you want me to continue with the series. For now, if you enjoyed watching, a rating would be much appreciated. Don't forget to sub to the channel for more content like this. Consider following me on Twitter and joining my Discord server if you haven't yet. I have both a League of Legends and Genshin section in there if you feel like being part of the community. But until next time, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.